So we've been talking in the last 2 sessions a lot about ourselves and what we need to do and how we need to prepare ourselves for dating and marriage and things like that. But there's some things that we actually have to know before we get to the point of dating what we're looking for. And sometimes we can massively over-spiritualize things. Now, there is a spiritual content to dating. There's a spiritual content to relationships, but there's also a physical side as well. Okay? And it's not wrong to say it. It's got to work. Okay? Because if it doesn't work, it's probably not God. Okay? So there's 3 areas that God is going to show you and lead you in. And it's also not just going to be thus saith the Lord. It's also going to be it's pleasing to your eyes. It's going to be good for you. It's going to be making sense for you. And that's body. You need to like what you're looking at. Now, I like what I'm looking at. This is an awesome woman right here. That was good. That's good. Yeah, she's a hottie. And see, the thing is that sometimes in fervent Christian culture, what we do is we override that and we just move towards, and not everyone, but I just need to get this out there because this thing can't exist if you're going to be happy moving forward. We can't override and say, well, hey, this thing needs to be so spiritual, and we need to have such a spiritual monastery-based relationship where everything that we talk about has to be God and Holy Spirit and Jesus and, the last deliverance or the last person I got saved or, it doesn't, a relationship that looks like that is not healthy if that's all you've built it around. Now, that needs to be part of it, but you need to primarily have these 3 things. And the first one is that you're attracted to them physically. It might be the way that their hair looks. It might be, everyone's got their little list. It might be, I need to have, they need to have these kind of eyes. I want to, like Bex was like, got to be over 6 foot. Okay, everyone's got their thing. Okay, and it needs to work for you. Okay, if there's something that you really don't like, don't get tormented with the fear of God's going to make me marry someone like that. Honestly, because everyone has to deal with that. It's like, God's just going to speak to me and I'm going to have to suffer for Jesus for the rest of my life. That's actually not how, that's messed up. Okay, so it's not the spiritual weird thing. It's going to be something that you like. See, when you seek first the kingdom, he gives you the desires of your heart. True? And so the desire of your heart wouldn't look like something that doesn't look good to you. Okay? So these 3 things is that physically there needs to be attraction. If you're not physically attracted, but you've got some spiritual compatibility, you need to ask yourself, am I desperate? Selah. No, seriously, because the funny thing is, and I'm just going to get there with this, because when we're desperate, we can make anything become what we want it to mean or be. You can go into the Bible right now and find 10 reasons why you want to do what you want to do. Doesn't mean it's God. Like, I'll tell you a story. Like, I go up into the mountains. I like to tell lots of hunting and fishing stories, but I go up into the mountains, and I've been in the, hunting in the forests of New Zealand my whole life. And I remember being 5 years old, going rabbit hunting with my family. And everything in my mind, because I was like the Terminator of rabbits. I showed up and it was like, rabbits are going to meet Jesus tonight. Seriously, and it was great. But the problem is because I was so fixated on what I wanted to see, I started seeing rabbits everywhere. And I'd start shooting at twigs. It's like, no, that ain't a rabbit. That little piece of bush there that looks like a rabbit, it ain't a rabbit. That little log over there that's fallen over and it's kind of dead and rotted funny, that ain't a rabbit. And so sometimes when we want something to be God bad enough, we'll make it that in our minds. And that's why it's so important that we don't walk in desperation, we walk in faith. Because desperation is associated with fear, and faith actually has a calming relaxedness over it where it's still looking for the promise, not sure totally what that looks like, but I'm ready, I'm positioned, and I'm about to find it. And when I do, I'm going to know it.
The enemy, he'll bring someone to you, and it will be like everything exactly what you wanted, but the spiritual just doesn't quite line up. But everything else is so amazing. So let's emphasize on all the other amazing things and just sort of neglect this tiny little area, which is actually the most important area. Even though, yes, physically, yes, emotionally. But when those things fade and you get old and wrinkly and stuff changes, you're going to be looking at their heart. And you're going to be looking at how they're walking with Jesus. And so we just need to always have our guard up and just have the wisdom of heaven upon us to see with the eyes of the Spirit where people are. You know, and when you first meet someone, it's kind of hard because you don't always know exactly where they're at spiritually. And you have to get to know them to be able to figure that out. But you need to purpose in your heart that that's going to be the most important thing. Just like you live from your spirit, not your soul, not your body, you live from your spirit. So it's the same with relationships. Spirit is most important, okay? And I said it in the first time we did these sessions. Time and time again, it'll be like the enemy will bring someone who looks exactly like what you want. And they could even say the same, like, you know, little Christian lingo that makes you think they're so on fire. They know how to say, you know, they've listened to a few podcasts and they know how to say all the right things, but there's no depth. They're not really sacrificing for the Lord. They're not really totally in love with him. They just learned the new, Christianese, secular / cool way of saying things. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I just really wanted to emphasize too, and he referenced Adam was in the garden working and God brought Eve. It was the same with Ruth. She was working hard in the harvest and God brought Boaz, and Boaz saw her. Okay, she wasn't like saying, hey, Boaz, look at me. What's up? I know, look at how hard I'm working. No, she had her head down, and it was in the harvest, and she was working unto the Lord, and Boaz saw her. You know, and in our lives, and just speaking to the women, spiritually, your job is to put your head down and be in the harvest and throw your heart into the heart of Jesus and let him bring the Boaz to you. Let him bring the person who will be your covering and that spiritual covering. And we probably are going to touch on that later too. But, it's so important. Don't let it be the last little thing that checks the box. Let it be the first box that you check off before the other things come into play. I mean, obviously, you're going to have to be attracted to them before you talk to them. But you hear what I'm saying.